Welcome to the Bookish Hour with your hosts, Sarah E. Burr and J.C. Kenney. And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Bookish Hour. I'm Sarah Burr.
And I am J.C. Kenney. Happy Baby Friday evening, folks. Sarah, we got a good friend back hanging out with us tonight, so let's get bookish.
Yes, let's get bookish. Yesterday we had Wine Wednesday. I don't know what Thursday is, but I've got my nice fruity drink with me to celebrate the start of the almost weekend. And as JC said, we have a wonderful guest with us this evening, a familiar face to those of you who joined us earlier this year. This evening, we have Paula Charles joining us, but she is writing as Janna Rollins in this new series. So we wanted to make sure that any confusion, we cleared that up right at the start in case you're like, wait, don't I know her? You do. She writes wonderful, cozy mysteries, and we're absolutely delighted to have her back on the show. Paula, welcome.
Thank you for having me here in my second personality. It's always good to have dual personalities.
I find that must be like a really fun thing to maybe adopt as an author. And I wonder in a way if you can maybe start out by way of introduction a little bit by telling us about how you came to be Janna Rollins.
Sure. So when I started out thinking about writing cozy mysteries and actually writing them and deciding that I wanted to try to get published, I had already decided to use a pen name of Janna Rollins. And I had picked it because my mom's name was Janice and she had always wanted to be a writer. So I kind of modernized Janice with Janna. And then my grandfather was Rollin. And so I went with Rollin. So it's just kind of a mashup of my, family names. So it means something. And that's what I was going to write under. And no particular reason other than my actual last name is very hard to say and pronounce. And I just kind of went with this pen name. And then I happened to sign contracts just a couple of days apart with both Crooked Lane and Level Best Books. And Crooked Lane said, nope, you have to write under a different name. So I went with Paula Charles. So Paula is my real name. So that's easy to answer to. And then Charles is my other grandfather's name, my paternal grandfather's first name. So that's how it came about. So here I am.
I love the connection of family that you talk about because not only is, that's a beautiful tribute, but it also speaks really strongly to, I think, the relationships that you develop within your cozies. Both books that you've written are very, very heavy on the family element. And I would love to hear more about the family that we meet in An Escape Goat, which is book 1 in the Zen Goat Mysteries, which is, oh my gosh, absolutely love this book. So like the picturesque cozy, absolutely loved it. I can't say enough about it. Folks who are joining us this evening, we've got Farmhouse Reader, DHB, and Rotorhead all chiming in and Rotorhead is saying Thirsty Thursday, which how did I not think of that?
Yes, of course.
I can't recommend this book enough. So delightful. But we meet Callie Haybeck, and Callie has moved from Seattle to New Hampshire to start a goat yoga retreat, which I just have so many questions of how did you decide on this idea, and maybe talk a little bit about the family unit that Callie finds herself really meeting for the first time.
Sure. So actually with this book, with An Escape Goat, the setting came first. And it's kind of a funny story. So my husband is from New England. He grew up in New England. We met in Wyoming. We now live in Washington, where I'm Pacific Northwest native. And he always said that he couldn't take me to New England because I would love it and want to stay. It took us a lot of years to get back there. When we finally did 4 or 5 years ago now, he was right. I wanted to stay. And so I got to thinking, well, if I set a book somewhere in New England, I'm gonna have to come back for research. So that's how the setting happened. And I fell in love with all of New England. We happened to be, my daughter was doing a low residency MFA program at New Hampshire University. And so we had gone at the same time. She just went, I think it was twice a year for like a week or 2 weeks at a time. And so we went at the same time, and she went off to her MFA program, and we explored, and my husband showed me all of his old stomping grounds. And I don't know, I just loved New Hampshire and the iconic, New England farms. It's just gorgeous. So I decided to set it there. And then I actually didn't realize until my editor told me, mentioned the family ties, that I've got family on both sides of the mystery. In the protagonist and her, she took a DNA test, the spit test that we all do when we're armchair genealogists anymore. And she found long lost family in New Hampshire. So her dad, the backstory is, her dad, when he was a little kid, his own father left when he was like 2 years old. He never knew him. He felt abandoned by him and never wanted anything to do with that side of the family, doesn't know them. But Callie really wanted to know. So he said, do your thing. You've found them, go visit them. Leave me out of it. I don't want anything to do with it. So when she took that DNA test, she found a first cousin once removed or some nonsense like that. And they're about the same age, and they started talking online, and they became good friends like immediately. It was one of those relationships where they felt like they've known each other forever. And so Tristan, her cousin, said, well, why don't you, he lives in Boston. He said, why don't you come back here and meet my grandparents, who are Callie's great aunt and uncle, her dad's uncle. Her grandfather is already deceased, so she wasn't able to meet him, but that's how she gets back there. She falls in love with the area. She's half in love with her new family, really wants to stay and get to know them. The farm's been in the family for like 5 generations. So she decides to stay. She taught yoga in Seattle. So she thinks this would be a farm setting, a great place for goat yoga. And that's how that came about.
So
Sorry, Sarah, you go ahead.
I need to know, how did the goat aspect of this whole yoga venture come into your mind? Because I was like, how did like, as a writer, it's like, how did you come up with this?
Well, I had goats when I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
I was very involved with FFA and things. And well, we had goats and sheep. We had all kinds of stuff, but goats. And then for the last 7 years, I've had goats in my own barnyard. We have one left. So Bugsy, I'm going to hold the cover up really quick for anybody who hasn't seen it. So this is Bugsy on the cover. And he actually lived in my barnyard until about a year ago. He's gone now. But I get to keep him alive in the book. So that's precious. How it came about.
Well, and I just think it's so fun because goat yoga is a thing. I've seen the videos online, cat yoga as well, which is what my life goal is, to do a cat yoga thing.
Yes.
But what I think is so funny to me right now, Paula, is you're talking about, this beautiful bucolic scene that we can all envision in New England, found family. You've got all the warm and fuzzies there. When the book opens, it's not the best moment in Callie's life.
She's a kind of a mess.
And the first thing, at the risk of giving it away, I don't want to give away too much, folks, but the opening scene when Callie, all I'm going to say is she trips and falls in it, and I'll let you kind of figure it out from there, folks. But it was like, it's to me, it's like, okay, you've painted this wonderful picture, and then that's the reality for her.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And that came about. So I was in the middle of writing it, and I usually always have to go back to the first scene, the first sentence, and try to, make it a little better than it is, a little more, I've heard, the job of your first sentence is to get the reader to read the second sentence, right? So I was taking a workshop, and I think it was 3 Sisters in Crime, and it was an editor. from one of the big publishing houses. I don't recall at the time. But she said, she was talking about cozy mysteries in particular. And, and it is so subjective. So this was her thing, but she was like, I want, when I look at those pages, when I'm reading those first pages that your agent has sent, I want the world burning down around her. Around it. So I was like, okay.
It's pretty, and it's pretty close to the world burning around, at least in the setting that Callie finds herself, because she's starting this brand new business. She's kind of like, she's uprooted her life, where she's trying this new venture, and then in rolls this like glam squad of women who I just like could picture them so clearly, especially as someone who was obsessed and continually is obsessed with the movie Mean Girls. It's like, I could just picture like the plastics walking onto this yoga retreat, and what an entrance that our villain victim makes. And so I would love to know, let's talk a little bit more about the mystery element, because we have Callie's business is kind of thrown for a loop when one of her guests is found face down in a haystack. And I really loved how that scene played out, because I felt it was very unique in a cozy mystery, where it wasn't necessarily like the police weren't like all pitchforks and like, oh, like she's the one that did this and all of this stuff, and accusing Callie of committing murder. But it's really more of an understated thing that's going on. So was that like an intention from a storytelling point of view, or is that just something that's like, you know what, this would be a really cool way for a murder to unfold?
I don't know that I thought that deeply about this. Honestly. Yeah, I wanted, it's on a farm. So I wanted, especially in this first book, that first murder to be there on the farm. I wanted the goat to be involved. So yeah, I didn't think that deeply about it, honestly.
It just magically happened that way, which, wow, yeah. if only we were all that lucky as writers.
Yes. Paula, you are just that gifted of a writer that you didn't have to think about it. It just happened.
Well, I don't know. Just like you said, lucky.
I definitely, when we meet Angeline and her group of ladies, they were very fascinating, like a really, and again, like adding to that really strong cast of characters, where not only do you have Callie's family unit with her aunt, her great aunt, her great uncle Tristan, who I absolutely love. I was like,
okay, good.
I'm here for a Tristan. I love it.
Okay, good.
But then there's like this like family unit within our kind of group of guests. And so again, like really speaking to those relationship connections. And I'm curious if, when you were planning out the characters who are going to appear in the story, like what were kind of some of the goals that you had in mind for the folks that you wanted your readers to be introduced to?
Well, honestly, I was about 3/4 of the way through writing the first draft before I realized I had cousins on both sides of the mystery. So again, I think some of it I just kind of fell into. But so with the Mean Girls, the group of Mean Girls, as I like to call them, again, like you mentioned, the Mean Girls movie. I watched that. I watched several episodes, like a week worth of episodes of The Bachelor from various seasons. And I am not a Bachelor watcher, but
you're going to get some good character studies from shows like that.
Absolutely. And I think that in creating them and making their personalities feel real, I think that I'm going to credit The Bachelor. But yeah, I wanted the dynamics of that group, the group of the 4 Mean Girls, to be, we've got the 2 that are just really nasty. And then we've got who it turns out to be a cousin of the nastiest is nice. Then there's family dynamics between them and what's gone on in their backstory. And then we've got one other character that's more neutral. And I just wanted the different personalities within that group to play off of each other, because it's almost like and I can't remember, someone called it like a closed farm mystery.
Yes.
instead of a closed door,
room.
But it can only be this group of people. The murder's got to be here somewhere.
And, speaking of closed farm or closed circle, so one of the questions that I have is, the town is called Bob White Hollow, New Hampshire, which I think just like, oh my God, what a fabulous, fabulous name. So I've got to know, is that a real name or is that something you came up with?
That's something I came up with, and I honestly can say that that's one of the things that I put more research into than anything. Okay. Just trying to come up with a really good name that I thought reflected that area, because we're in northern New Hampshire. We're on the backside almost of the White Mountains. Mount Washington's there, the presidential range, and I really wanted to reflect some wildlife or something about the area. So I thought a lot about that. I had all kinds of variations of names, and then finally landed on something that felt right.
Yeah, well, I think you nailed it, because I mean, to me, when I first saw that, it made me think of the Headless Horseman, honestly, because again, which to me is a big compliment, because that's such such a timeless story. But kind of along that line, though, I think those of us who don't live in New England or aren't from that area or don't have family there, we kind of often are given this picture that New Englanders can be kind of insular, a little standoffish to folks they don't know. Not necessarily that they're mean, but that, there's a definite, we're the real thing and you're an outsider thing. Can you talk about that dynamic? And I see Sarah, as a native New Englander, nodding her head. Can you talk about how that dynamic works for and or maybe against Callie in the book as a literal outsider?
That's a very good question. It's something that I hadn't thought a lot about, except for, like I said, I'm married to a native New Englander. And we have a joke within our own family that, and I'm trying to think of how I'm not going to say the whole joke because there's some bad language in it, but that New Englanders are basically, like you said, a little standoffish, but they're going to give you the shirt off their back. Where in the Pacific Northwest, we're going to act really, really friendly to you and flip you off when you leave. Oh. It's like these different dynamics. And I think, one thing, there's a scene where Callie goes into town and I think it's the first scene that where she is dealing with people that are not on the farm for the retreat or her family. And she has an interaction with the pharmacist in town, who is not, he's telling her, you better watch yourself because you're bringing things to the haybacks that they're the nicest people around and we're watching you, basically. And she was like, well, what have I done? So I think, some of that attitude a little bit plays in there.
Mm-hmm.
I have to chime in just from personal experience, because although grew up in Maine since I was 7 years old, I was not born there. And so I was always from away. And,
really?
and that was established of, you may live here, but you are not from here, even though I was there for, almost 20 years of my life. But still, people were very, very kind and very helpful and whatnot. But there was always that little undercurrent of what, you're not a real true born Mainer. So I kind of felt for Callie in those situations, because I'm just thinking back to my 7-year-old self and being like, wow, I remember feeling like such an outsider in those moments. And it seems like, though, most of the community of Bob White Hollow, which again, I have to echo JC's, anything with the word hollow in it, I'm just I love. And coming up with a cozy mystery town name is like one of my favorite activities to do. It's one of my favorite parts of the writing process and like the developmental process of, okay, like how do I come up with a new place? And so it's always really fun when you're like, yes, this is it. So let's talk about a little about the residents of Bob White, because we have the Haybecks, and they are a respected family that have been in the area for generations. But we've got some really great eateries, shops, places to visit that the guests of the retreat are able to go out and venture to, should they like it. So I'm wondering, Paula, if you can share with us some of the places that people will go to off the farm in An Escape Goat.
Sure. There's the first thing that comes to mind is Sweet Pete's Ice Cream Shop. It's also there is a river walk that's along the Connecticut River, and Sweet Pete's it's in a small like craftsman style house almost, that he's turned into. Pete and his wife Claire have turned into their ice cream shop, and it faces the river walk. So if you're sitting, they've got a little bar against the front window, and if you're sitting at that little bar, you're looking out at the river and the walk that goes in front of it, obviously. So there's that, and Callie has, well, as the series goes on, because I realize some of what I'm trying to say. So we're talking about book 1. I've already written book 2, and I'm starting book 3. So Callie spends a lot of time in Sweet Pete's throughout the series. There is a historic inn that the whole retreat group. So Callie's working with other business owners in town to give her retreat guests the whole package, their retreat package. So goat yoga at the farm is just a part of that, and they're staying in the guest cottage. But she's also set them up with a paint and sip night that's takes place in the bar at the historic inn, where they go and they have wine and they paint a picture, which is all the rage right now.
Yeah.
So the bar itself inside the inn is called Pie Eye Cellars. There is a cafe, a Bunny Hill Bistro, that's in town that we actually don't see in the book, except for they have catered and they've delivered sandwiches to the farm at one point. There is a coffee shop that I have just lost the name of it, but I think it has a bear in it.
It's hard keeping track of all of these places, and especially now that you're writing, that cues up my next question for you perfectly, because you are writing 2 different series. Do you find yourself, and also like with like your timeline of, did you meet Callie before you met Donna, or was it vice versa? Like, and how do you keep these 2 folks separate in your mind? Because I have trouble with that. The barriers kind of begin to break down after a while.
I was going to say, because you both write multiple series, so you are more expert on this than I am, who am brand new. But no, I met Donna first, and then I met Callie. And normally, so I have taken a page out of Ellie Alexander's playbook, because I asked her this question at one point: how do you keep them straight? And she said, I only write one at a time. And then she changes like some of the decor in her office and stuff as she's writing each one. So I do that. I've got a murder board. I've got, other decorations sitting around. And when I'm writing Donna, the hardware store mysteries, everybody on my board is from that world. When I'm writing the Zen Goat, everybody on my board is from that world. I have a little red barn that, came from a Christmas village that I have sitting on the bookcase right under there, so that I can, try to keep in the right world. But definitely that did just happen, because as I started to say the name of the coffee shop, I started to say Hungry Bear, and I'm thinking, no, that's the drive-in in Pine Bluff in the Donna series. And I just realized I do think that it has the name Bear in it too. So now I've confused myself even more by using Bear in 2 different things.
I'm there with you.
I'm pretty good at that.
And I think the only thing that really matters is for viewers to be on the safe side, get both books, read both books, so you yourselves know the difference between which bear is which.
That
So
is a great way to phrase it. I actually, and this is a question that I would like to pose to you both. This had come up earlier in the week when I was doing a live chat with some readers, and someone asked whether or not there are times when I'm writing a scene where I'm like, you know what, this scene doesn't make it in this book, or this event isn't good for this particular book, but I'm actually like able to like repurpose it in a different series, or and kind of craft it to suit it to my characters in that world. Have you found yourself ever writing something that you're like, like this just isn't working here, but maybe I can make it work somewhere else?
Yeah, for me, I have not had that happen yet, but that fascinates me. I can see definitely how that could happen. So usually I will pull out whatever scene isn't working, and I don't just throw it away. I usually pull it out and put it in a separate document just in case I can repurpose it somewhere later. But no, that crossover hasn't happened yet. I like it.
Yeah, I don't think I've had that happen either. I think the way I write in that, I do so much outlining and prepping beforehand that when I'm actually doing the writing, it's a very rare occurrence when I will get rid of an entire scene. And I'm trying to think. Yeah, I don't think I've ever had one that I've held on to, even though I think there have been times where I'll get a stray idea and jot it down. That's maybe just kind of a little story nugget for something later on. So, I think, it's makes total sense that there are going to be those moments that, okay, not here, but later, especially because we're all creating these immersive worlds, where, to a certain degree, more information we can give our readers, the better.
I definitely, I feel like when it happens for me, it's because I'm like you, Paula. I have to write things one at a time. I've tried writing multiple, but like doing one in the morning and a different one in the afternoon, but it's like that did not work very well at all. I have to fully be with the characters that I'm with, in like just thinking about them all the time. But I think there are moments where I'll be in a certain scene, and most usually with my book blogger mysteries and my Glenmeyer Whim mysteries, because those characters are much more introverted than Coco of the Trending Topic Mysteries is. And it's just like, it just feels like they're elbowing me like, hey, Sarah, like I haven't been let out of my cage in a little while. Like,
don't forget me.
I want to like insert myself into here. And so I always find it really fascinating especially once folks are writing multiple series, like how the heck do we keep everything straight? But that this idea of having your writing desk reflect your space, I think that's so cool. That's a really neat thing. I always learn something new.
Right? Yes, we can all learn from each other all the time. It's pick up so many little tips.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I tell you what, folks, we're about half past, which is a bummer because that means we only get to spend another half hour with Paula, and this has been absolutely delightful. So don't forget, if you want to relay a message to Paula, you want to ask her a question, feel free, just type it in the chat, and Sarah and I will make sure we bring it up. So Paula, I have a question. Inquiring minds want to know, in your book, a goat is caught drinking wine. Does that happen in real life?
I mean, I'm sure it would if you left your wine glass in the goat pen. Yes. Try not to do that.
Well, that's what it's one of those things like, would that really happen? I mean, would a goat really do that? And so.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they're very food driven. They don't, just the old thing of goats eating tin cans and everything, that is not true. However, they are very food driven. And yes, if you were holding a glass of wine and petting a goat and not paying attention, pretty soon their tongue's going to be in there.
Really? Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So when I was reading and I saw that old adage about the tin can, I have very, very vivid memories of books from my childhood of just like that featured goats, and they were just like eating everything.
Always. Yes.
You know, it was like a goat that like lived at like a dump and he was just like eating the rubber tires, eating everything that he could find. So when we have our veterinarian come onto the scene and he's kind of in an offhanded comment that Callie is not meant to hear, kind of goes after her for like, you know, this lady doesn't have a clue of what she's doing raising goats. I was like, oh, well, you know what? I didn't realize that because I was under the impression that goats, I mean, obviously I probably wouldn't be feeding them, you know, trash, but it was like, oh, I thought that was kind of what goats were known for. So I was like, his affront over it, I thought was really funny.
Good. It was meant to be. So, and that actually they can be, like I said, they're very food driven. They like their snacks for sure. But they can be really picky at the same time. So there's been a couple of times where we have gotten like end of season hay and it's dusty and they won't eat it. They would starve to death before they would eat that hay. Thank you very much.
Wow.
We have one of our viewers commenting that they have a pup who loves beer and would no doubt drink wine from a glass if given the opportunity.
Exactly.
So
chance presents itself.
One thing that so now that we're on the topic of goats, I have two things. One, I need to know, did you come up with the term goat raisins, or is that like something that is, because I was like, I know exactly what she's talking about.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
no,
it was
I
like in the
don't
second
think so.
line of I was like, this is like, that's such a perfect name for what it is.
No, I'm pretty sure I haven't. I'm pretty sure I have seen like bottled, like chocolate covered raisins that people have called goat raisins, for marketing purposes and stuff. No, I think it's
All right, so that's not an exclusive to you. I was just like, oh wow, like, but the imagery, I was like, okay,
yes,
we're here. I know what's going on, and that was very, very like, a very much like in the moment type of experience. But also, you have given your protagonist a goat allergy, and I would love to know like what the Callie's got a lot going on with trying to start up this new business, and then she has an allergy thrown at her. It's like how I guess what was the thought process on that? Because I was like, oh man, this poor girl can't catch a break with her goats.
Well, actually, that comes directly from me.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah, like I said, I had goats as a teenager, and then again for the last 7 years, and we have one left. When she's gone, we will not replace our goats, unfortunately, because they are lovely. They're so fun. But I have a overactive histamine condition.
Oh wow.
Where when something becomes a trigger, then it's a trigger for life, and it's my histamine reaction is over the top drama queen.
Oh my.
And I have developed that with the goats. So that's where Callie's come from. Hers is not as bad as mine. She's going to be able to resolve that. No spoiler there, but she's going to be able to resolve that as the series goes on. So yeah, that's where it came from.
That actually makes me feel a lot better, because I just think like, oh my gosh, that poor girl, she's trying to do yoga poses and like not feeling it. It's like, oh
again,
man.
it just comes from, put her in this situation and make her suffer, make the world burn down around her.
Well, so that brings up a question that I've got, because I've seen the videos of goat yoga, and like I've said, it just sounds so much fun. But so what was your thought process when you decided, no, I'm going to do for this character, just opening a retreat and yoga studio isn't enough. I'm going to turn it up to 11 and add the whole goat thing with it. Can you talk about that little process? Because, it's just the whole goat yoga thing, especially the cover and the title, it's so fun.
So that came, like I said, the setting came first here with, I wanted New Hampshire and I wanted a farm. I'm a farm girl. And then Callie came about, and then the goats before the yoga. So in my head, as I'm puzzling this out, what's this going to look like? And I guess that came from, staring out my own window at the goats. Like, no, we're on a farm, there's going to be goats. And I would venture to say that goats are probably my favorite farm animal, if you were to have a favorite farm animal, because they're just fun. They're full of personality. So that came first. And then just the idea of goat yoga popped into my head. There was it was just that whole brainstorming, the initial, how you're super excited, almost like a first date with that initial new shiny idea, and you start jotting things down. And it was just all in that first session that the whole goat yoga thing popped up.
That's awesome. And that you're talking about like that shiny new idea. It's such a great feeling. And to know, and it's especially in this, because we're in a competitive publishing market, coming up with those like new and like an unexplored idea that still can embody the cozy feel to it.
Yes.
I think that's a home run in itself, because, we can, say all these businesses or careers that people can have all day long, but sometimes it's hard to make them cozy. But
yes,
a Zen yoga retreat just seems like it would be.
It just screams cozy.
Yeah, it's like that's like no brainer right there. We have DHB asking in the chat, how is it possible to keep yoga focus with goats around you? So how, I guess from an actual practicing standpoint, how does Callie like get her guests to just like vibe with these goats?
Yeah, so goat yoga is not a serious, it's a real thing, but it's not a serious yoga practice. It's more about communing with the goats and just calming. Animals are very calming for people, right? So Callie explains in the beginning with the first session that she does when the mean girls arrive, she tells them, don't worry about your form. We're gonna be doing different poses, but they are designed to give the goats optimum opportunity to play King of the Mountain and stuff, because goats like to be on, especially baby goats, they like to be on the highest thing, and they're gonna, run under your arms and through your legs like they're bridges, and they're gonna jump on you. And the whole idea is for entertainment value and for calming, for serenity, really. So yeah, keeping the whole quiet, the balance, the peace of a regular yoga session isn't really in the cards when it's goat yoga.
Yeah, I tell you what, I've watched some videos of goat yoga. I've watched some videos of cat yoga. All I'm going to say is, folks, if you got a couple of minutes and you're a little stressed out, watch some of those, because they are just so fun and so delightful. And everybody knows I'm a cat person, but baby goats are some of the cutest things in the universe. And so thank you for bringing goat yoga to us all.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, that's gonna be.
Book your session at the Zen Go, right?
Yeah.
And the experience that Callie is giving her guests. You'd mentioned about how she's working with different vendors in the town to bring food to the farm, to get them out in the community. She has a masseuse and facialist come, and it just seems like, oh man, this is like such a dreamy vacation. That's definitely, I think, something that if I can see influencers on Instagram just being like, oh my gosh, like look at what I did this weekend.
Right.
And it just made it so fun and in a contemporary modern way, but still embodied that cozy atmosphere that we all know and love. So again, just I guess there wasn't really a question of that. Just like, I really loved it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, this is the official Paula Charles, Janna Rollins fanboy and fangirl moment for Sarah and JC, and just, we love you and all that kind of stuff. But I gotta ask, what's next for Callie? She hopefully this is not the last we're seeing of her, I hope.
No, I'm contracted for 3 books in the series at this point. Book 2 is written, which will find Callie about a month later, after an scapegoat, it will find her at the county fair where she has been asked to come bring her goats and teach a session of goat yoga each morning.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
That sounds like a fun setup. I love a good fairground mystery.
Right? Yes.
Lots of suspects.
Can
Can we talk a little bit about romantic elements within the book? Within like the first, 20 pages, Callie's like introduced to like 5 really attractive people. And so I'm curious,
like, is it really hot out here?
Yeah. And it's like, wow, everybody around her is just like these gorgeous people. And so I'm curious about like, how did you whittle down your pool of suitors, and who are the ones that charmed you the most as the writer?
So going in, I wanted Callie, her backstory. So many times we see in cozies, the protagonist has just had her heart broken. She's maybe widowed. She's had a really bad breakup. So when I was thinking about Callie, I decided I wanted her to not have that. She's dated and she's 27, but she's never had that really meaningful relationship where her heart's been broken. And she's kind of like, what's wrong with me? Is it too much to ask just to have my heart broken? But she's just never found that person. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted that to be her backstory instead of this big trauma that she's coming in from. And then as I was getting my characters together and figuring out who is who, I decided Yvette. Of course, and one of the big things is, so I picture Aunt Ellen and Uncle Will. They are Grandma and Grandpa Walton in my head. There, right? So, and then when I was brainstorming and getting all my characters together, we were also watching All Creatures Great and Small. Right?
Nice.
Yeah.
So Yvette. So that's in my mind. So all those other beautiful characters were not love interests for Callie, but the vet, though, I mean, it's a very slow burn, and at this point, they don't really even like each other, right? They're butting heads, and he thinks she's an idiot, and she thinks he's probably right.
Now I'm thinking of Schitt's Creek with Alexis and Ted.
And Ted. Well, no, Paula, when you said All Creatures Great and Small, the opening scene when Levi comes and they have this moment and he's like saying these snippy things to her, I'm like, he sounds like Dr. Farnan. And I'm just like, right? But then he has moments of, where he's just like really sweet and nice, and you see, the James aspect, but then they're, so I was just like, oh, I very much appreciate, and was like, I felt that in my experience. So you did. Good. If that was your goal, you accomplished it.
It was my goal. Yeah. When I was querying this, my mashup was the Waltons meets All Creatures Great and Small, with, Nancy Drew thrown in.
That's a binge worthy combo, in my opinion.
Yes.
It's one of the things I'd like to hear you tell us a little bit, Paula, is when we were last chatting, you talked about the fact that you wrote your protagonist, your amateur sleuth, somebody is kind of like a peer of yourself. And that someone who's, got a few more years under her belt, has been through been through life that's very different for Callie. Can you talk about, writing somebody who, Callie's 27. I have a kid who's 27. So, very much that generational shift. Talk about, that a little bit for us.
Yeah, because my youngest kid is 30 now. So she's younger than my youngest kid. But I think, I don't know about you, JC, or Sarah, you're much younger than me, but I still feel like I'm all those ages still. It was easy for me to channel that and that feeling of being younger. And then I think because having kids that are even though they're a little older than Callie is, there's still the attitude and just being kind of at loose ends and not knowing where they're going, but being capable, very capable at the same time. It doesn't, when I shift between writing Donna and Callie, it's not a hard shift for me. It's good. I mean, she's not me by any stretch of the imagination, but I can channel her easily for some reason.
And Callie, she's like very upfront with not only just like her failings and where she's struggling, but she's also been very committed to, she's like, I need to become an adult and I need to grow up in a sense, which I think that we've all had those thoughts. And sometimes, I still think it's like, man, like, what am I going to do when I grow up? And like, it's like, when do we ever really grow up?
We don't.
And I think that Callie captures that really nicely.
Okay.
And I think the setting lends itself to it as well, because you can still, maintain that warmer pace of life than if, she was starting over in a bustling city or something along those lines.
Yeah. And she thinks about, she traded her childhood bedroom for a bedroom now in her great uncle's house. Mm-hmm. How is that so different? And, that's part of her character arc as the series goes along, that growth and becoming more of an adult.
Well, it's going to be really exciting to see that character arc play out to hear what the next titles are going to be, because An Escapegoat is just like such a great, love a good cozy pun, but it's like, well, that title just writes itself. So it's like, oh, I can't wait to see what else you have up your sleeve
book
for
two,
us.
my working title, which I think it's going to be, because I've again gone back and forth a lot with titles, and I think my final title for book 2 is going to be Goats Just Want to Have Fun.
Take my money. Take my money.
I absolutely love it.
Yeah, my working title right now for book 3 that I've just really started is Here We Goat Again.
Oh gosh. Those are good. Those are winners.
Yeah, I'm not jealous of those fabulous titles. No, I'm not.
That is one thing about cozies that I just will love for absolutely ever. Like, just the titles that we get to see, and like, I'm scrolling through my feed during the morning and I see somebody with like, here's my new cover, and it's like, wow, like what a great title. There's so many good ones out there. It's such a fun.
There's a little bit of jealousy of, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of a title called Over My Dead Blog. That's a pretty good one too.
That's a good one. Yeah, that is a very good one. Yes.
That, I think that is the one thing about that book that I knew going in. It's like, that's what the title has to be. And I knew nothing else, but it's like, that's what the title is. It's like, I tend to start my books with a title just so that I can like make sure that the book is reflecting the title. I think only my Glenmire Wynn mystery books are the ones that I changed afterwards when I realized like I need to do candle puns, obviously. Mm-hmm.
Right.
So,
which you do very well, by the way.
Those ones are fun.
Knocking those out of the park.
Those ones are super fun. Always have a good time, which have a wonderful time this evening. And of course it's flown by. We're closing in on our hour together. Before we had gone live, I had mentioned to JC and Paula that I wanted to get their opinion on a controversial thread that I came across today on the internet. And hopefully it kind of cues up our, what are we reading? What are we watching? What are we listening to? What are we consuming? Discussion, because the question that I have for you both is, there's debate about whether audiobooks count as reading a book.
It does. Yes.
Agreed.
Okay. Well, then that's not much of a debate, but you would.
No.
It was like, and that was my thought. I was like, why are we questioning this? But you of course have people being like, well, the definition of reading is, and then, but it's like, reading is an experience. Like, you're experiencing the words. Yes, you're hearing them, but it was of course, like, when we go on the internet and we go down the rabbit hole of, you know, we're trying to research something, but then, oh, whoops, I clicked on this and now I'm, you know, in this argument about whether or not audiobooks are counted as reading.
Yeah, I think this debate's been going on ever since ebook became a thing for quite a while now. And I have seen, whether it's fact or not, I have seen articles stating that research shows that listening to a book or reading a book triggers the same part of your brain. So how can that not count?
Yeah. I definitely know that from like, I'm a person that I listen to a ton of audiobooks, and I listen to audiobooks while I'm doing other things. And there's, you know, the people that are like, well, then you're not fully focused on the work as you would be if you were reading it. But it's like, but the words are being like drilled right into my head. Like, how is that not the same type? Like, I'm still getting the story. Like, the story is still being delivered to me.
Creating an image, right?
Yeah. And sometimes it's even more vivid because of the performance that you're getting from the voice actor.
Yeah. And I think to me, from a practical standpoint, looking at it as from the point of view of a business person, you know, the book business is in competition with so many different forms of entertainment, not just movies, TV, video games, so many other things, you know, from if somebody is going to pick up a book or enjoy a book because they're listening to it, if they might not have done that, then by all means, you know, audiobook all the way. I'll be honest, audiobooks aren't quite for me. I think I've mentioned this before, that I just have a hard time concentrating. But that's just me. My wife listens to a ton of audiobooks. And to me, I think the people who try to do that, say that audiobooks aren't real reading, are, you know, those are the people that are interested in kind of the gatekeeping thing, which I don't, you know, I'm not a fan of. You know, like there, you know, for years it's been like, okay, people who read graphic novels and comics, that's not real reading. Well, yes, it is. It's a different form of reading. And so audiobooks, it's a different form.
Yeah. The word gatekeeping definitely came up. And I very much agree that it's like because there's some folks that like the only way that they can experience a book is through listening to it. And it's like, you can't deny them like that. Oh, you don't read if they are not experiencing it the way that you think that they should be. So
they're putting the same words into their brain that those of us who are reading on paper are getting. And I guess, and it just goes back to the whole gatekeeping thing. But, you know, my thing is, who started this debate? Why? And what's it to you? Why are you upset about this?
That's
mind your own dang business.
That's a question for like 99% of what's on the internet these days. So, but I'm glad to know that we're all on the same page. So in that line of thought, Paula, have you any book recommendations, audiobook recommendations, podcasts, movies, TV shows that you can share with our audience members this week?
Well, sure. I just came back from Left Coast Crime.
Ooh, nice.
And during the new author breakfast, which I got to present at, which was very cool.
Very cool.
But I, marked a couple of books down from other presenters. So I picked up Play the Fool by Lena Chern. And
that is fabulous.
Just finished it this afternoon. It was so good.
Oh yes, that is so good.
Yeah. So the premise is she's probably about the same age. I actually don't know how old Katie is, the protagonist in this book, but probably about the same age as Callie. And she's a mess. She's in a dead-end job. Her aunt taught her to read tarot cards when she was very little. But I mean, that's all I had to hear. And I jumped in. It was great. Really loved that. I am not an audiobook listener either. My little brain wanders away, but I do listen to podcasts. And there is hold on, I'm trying to remember the name of it. Curl Up and Clue In. Ooh. It's a new podcast. And they just do short episodes, and it's Cortagonist. If anybody in the cozy mystery world knows booktuber Cortagonist, Courtney and Spencer from Intentionally Bookish. And they talk different themes every week, and it's just a lot of fun. They're just adorable, very cute. Nice.
That sounds like
and watching is, have you guys watched Not Dead Yet? It's on Hulu. It's with Gina Rodriguez.
Okay.
Oh, I love
cute.
Gina, but I
Yeah,
have not. I haven't watched that. I haven't watched that one. I have it on my to watch list.
Yeah, just fun.
Good.
She's a journalist who ends up back at her hometown newspaper in the obituary writing session. And it turns out that whenever she's given a new obituary to write, the ghost of that person pops up and is with her until she hits submit.
Mm-hmm.
It's very
wow.
That's a really cool. That's like a definitely cozy premise for
Yeah.
sure. I love that.
Yeah.
Nice.
JC, what about you? What have you got that you're consuming?
So I just finished. So Sarah and I, as we mentioned before, with Malice Domestic coming up next week, Sarah and I get to host a panel of live from real live and in person, the Bookish Hour. And we are going to be hosting S.J. Roseanne, Lori R. King, and El Casimano. And so I just finished S.J. Roseanne's Kings of New York, or no, Mayors of New York. I'm sorry, Mayors of New York, one in her Lydia Chin, Bill Smith series. And so it's a PI procedural, really interesting, kind of takes a look at how Manhattan may be this big conglomeration, but there are a lot of different people who have a lot of different power in both official and unofficial capacities, and a really fascinating mystery with some things to say. So if you're looking for something a little different that's not quite cozy-ish, the Lydia Smith or Lydia Chin and Bill Smith Mysteries by S.J. Roseanne are fabulous. So that's what I just finished reading. Just a couple of days ago, went and saw Wicked Little Letters at the movie theater. Ooh. This is Olivia Colman, which I'd watch her just sit and just do nothing. Yes.
Yes.
It's a film set in 1920, the UK, based on a real story about how a woman starts receiving this really over-the-top, insulting letters. And so the mystery of the story is trying to figure out who is sending the letters. And there's a next door neighbor who is so very different from Olivia Colman's character. And maybe is she? Everybody thinks she's sending the letters, but is she really, or is she not? So it's delightful. I mean, it's 1920s UK, so it's kind of it's got very cozy-ish themes in it, and so it was an absolute delight. So just saw that. If you're looking for a movie to go see, that's what I'd recommend there. So that's what I got. How about you, Sarah?
Nice. Well, you guys know that I'm still on my Star Trek: The Next Generation journey, but we've purposely carved out time from our week to be like, I have to watch something else so that I can recommend it on the Bookish Hour, because otherwise people are gonna be like, oh, Sarah's talking about Star Trek again.
What's wrong with that?
I know, but it's like, I gotta shake it up. So reading wise, I like JC, preparing for our panel at Malice next week, listening to S.J. Roseanne's The China Trade, which is I think one of her first in the Bill Smith and Lydia Chin series. So listening to that on audiobook, reading a copy of Colleen Cambridge's A Murder Most French. I'm actually going to be writing a review of it for Kings River Life magazine, which is due next week. So I gotta finish reading it, which I absolutely love Colleen's writing. It's just so effortless and fun. And historical cozy mysteries are just I absolutely love them. So really enjoying that. I'm also listening to Sarah Rosette's Murder at the Mansions, which is, I think, book either 6 or 7 in her High Society Lady Detective series. That's been a series that I've just I love. I absolutely love it. And so it's fun to see her characters grow and develop. Podcast recommendation, finished Keith Morrison's Murder in the Hollywood Hills. It was a mini series that he put out through the Dateline NBC platform. Horrific crime, infuriating justice system, red tape that caused this predator to be on the streets for much longer than he should have been. But very, very worthwhile story to listen to. And then watching, just started, it's an Italian drama on Netflix that is called, it's The Law According to Lydia Poet. It's about Italy's first female lawyer. And so it's historical. It's really, really witty, a bit dark. It's very mature, but very, very much enjoyed it. And then we've also been on a Jack the Ripper fate, like watching all this stuff about Jack the Ripper. And so we watched over the weekend the movie From Hell, which the name itself is a little bit dark, but it follows a detective that, you know, is on the case of Jack the Ripper. And it had a lot of, you know, great actors in it. And it was good. I enjoyed it. It was maybe a little bit too long for my taste, but overall, like, I'm always there for like a good period mystery. So yeah, that's my consumption.
Nice.
So,
well, you know, folks, this is the heartbreaking time because we got to be saying goodbye because our hour is up. But before we go, Paula, thanks a million again. You are just fabulous, and it's always great chatting with you. Can you tell people where they can find you online? Are you going to be doing anything in person that people can come and see you? What do you got going on there?
I will be at Malice as well.
Yay.
I will be, yes, I'm looking forward to it. I'll be presenting at the New Author Breakfast and on a panel about setting.
Oh, perfect. You're going to knock that one out of the park.
Yeah. So you can find me online at paulacharles.com. I think I mentioned, I think it had just happened last time I was on, that I had been hacked and everything shut down. I lost all my social media, but I'm back again. You can find me as Rainy Day Mysteries on both Facebook and Instagram, and you can find the links to that on my website. So.
Perfect. Well, again, Paula, thank you so much for being here. And Scapegoat is available where books are sold.
By Janna Rollins.
By Janna Rollins, yes.
Right.
So, folks, if you've enjoyed our chat, show Paula some love, pick up her book.
Yes.
And of course, we always appreciate our viewers who join us live for the show and your delightful comments. Glad that you could be here. And Paula, we look forward to having you back on the show when you've got either a new book in Donna's life or Callie's life. So
thank you so much for having me, you guys. It's always such a delight to chat with you.
Awesome. And again, such a pleasure. Thank you. And to our viewers, we are going to be off for the next couple weeks because JC and I will be traveling. We're going to be back with a bookish moment on May 7th. I believe in the afternoon, our guest will be TK Sheffield. So until then, everybody be well and stay bookish. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.